Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in, and this is an art journal. An art journal, from the art therapy perspective, is a space for free expression of thoughts, feelings, events, and basically anything you can think of through a symbolic form. Art journaling doesn't have any rules. It's a place for free expression for your one-of-a-kind life. In an art journal, you don't need to know how to draw, write well, or worry about messing up techniques you've never attempted before. You just need to be you. The process of engaging in the activity is perhaps even more important than the actual result. An art journal is yours. Its primary purpose is not aesthetics or to make it pleasing to the eye. Although a sense of beauty may be important to you, it's not typically the primary purpose for this type of an art journal. Rather, it is your psyche, experience, your life, and the events that had occurred while making that particular page or entry. You don't need to worry about working in images. They will come spontaneously. Images may be something different from what you have always considered them to be. You may choose to show it to other people or even exhibit it in a gallery. An art journal is whatever you want to make of it. It is at your disposal alone. However, there is a certain definition to what an art journal is. A sketchbook or a written diary is not an art journal. Think of an art journal as a multidimensional diary. Instead of writing, you instead use artistic techniques to project your thoughts, feelings, theories, worries, strivings, affections, whatever you like or dislike, hopes, dreams, expectations, an homage to other artists, and whatever you can think of. So if you choose a writing medium as your choice of expression, such as calligraphy, you won't typically write it in a diary narrative. Rather, the content you're creating is a metaphor of how your day went. So instead of today on this or that date I have succeeded at something I never thought possible, you could choose a poem that best fits that feeling, such as Invictus. Some people use a journal only at special times, for instance on a retreat or during an unusual trip. Others write down reflections once a year to mark an event, perhaps their birthday or a festivity. The range of approaches used in art journaling can bring mental activities into momentary stillness. Thoughts are laid aside and insight breaks through into relief and insight. Art journaling invites each of us to be with our moment-to-moment becoming. There are plenty of styles that you would base your journal on, such as a junk journal, calico collage, dream journal, botanical journal, travel journal, diary, therapy journal, pocket albums. It can be entirely tactile, a country diary, a free writing thing, a scrapbook, an altered book, a photo journal, or anything and everything. I've started with just doing however I felt like the day went, but in the end it turned out as a conglomerate of assemblage, sewing, and fine art techniques. I don't really think of my art journal as having a theme, but I gotta explain it somehow, eh? Don't have any ideas for the style? You can try making an ink blot, automatic writing, automatic drawing, or altered books. Or take a photo every day that represents how your day went, your thoughts, emotions, or whatever else you want. For example, today you feel empty and lonely, so you take a photo of a crumbling building, print it out, and stuck it into the journal. In this journal, I've used a lot of ephemera from stuff I've already owned, found along the way, bought in craft stores, as long as they were cheap, bought online, or found old stuff in antiquarian shops. The conception of this thick boy was in the first week of starting my art therapy program. I remember starting it in a motel where I've stayed before I found a place to live. The journal was complete about 2 weeks after I graduated. 3 years in the making. The whole thing marks one period of my life, a journey of becoming an art therapist. Trust me, it's not as romantic as it sounds. It was lonely. Very much so. And monotonous. Made during a very, very, very weird period in American history's politics. From just looking at it, it looks like a junk journal. Which is when you make a journal out of stuff that you already have or that is readily available to you. Rather than going out and buying expensive pre-printed papers or those gosh darn moleskins, you use the stuff around you. Like the notebook I've used for this journal. It was a lined notebook given to me by a very dear friend of mine that I took with me to the US. Not my friend, the notebook. I don't usually prefer working in a lined notebook when I make art. But I thought, why buy a new notebook if I already have one? It turned out that it was exactly what I needed for this project. Since it was not perfect, I wasn't afraid to do whatever I wanted with it. During the time, my classmates mostly bought fancy notebooks with grade A paper for mixed media or watercolors. And if that works for you, all the power to you. Usually if you're the type of a person who is afraid to start something, you'd probably benefit from practicing the simply do it approach. On the other hand, having an expensive notebook can be a great incentive to start something. Better paper will endure more abuse and more experimentations. It's like getting a cheap camera versus getting a DSLR type pro camera. At the end of the day, there's only so much you can do with a bad camera. Personally, I feel freer to experiment when I'm on a material that I don't mind destroying. I've even ripped out the covers and replaced them with scrap parts, like from my old leather pouch and my old jeans. I wanted to make something that you can only totally experience when you actually hold it. I loved the way, the heaviness and the fullness of the journal when you hold it, the smell of it, the texture of the pages, and create something that you can explore. Because that is what I'm like, and that's the way I see life. A thing to be explored. That's the best way I can put it. The papers I used were print paper, newspapers, brown paper bags, tags, old book pages, collage pages, printouts and envelopes. In some of them I've used toilet paper because it's a pretty versatile material. I've even made a small sculpture of a baby made entirely out of toilet paper. Now, what's the symbolism in that, eh? Some of the pages were primed with gesso or collage. I just kept putting my thoughts into a visual form, without filter. Sometimes an image would come to mind that I knew it's what I'll put into the journal, even though I didn't know what the hell that image was supposed to mean. If I'd felt the need, I'd flip the pages, compared with previous pages, or try to see if there's a pattern. Like, is there a period of when I did nothing but dark images, or how often I'd make a positive image and why. At times, I'd look at the page and see if it's an accurate metaphor for how I felt during that day. I would continue to do so until the journal was full. There are periods when my art gets very morbid and macabre. Going through this journal, I realized that it's not as morbid. I keep the controversial morbid imagery mostly to myself, as people have a tendency to get freaked out and misinterpret the purpose behind the images I've created. I don't view morbid themes or imagery as morbid or horrible. I never viewed it as something diseased or to be shunned. I saw it as interesting, fascinating, or out of the ordinary. Maybe I'll talk more about that topic some other time. Just like with regular books where covers are made when the novel is finished, the covers of the art journal are typically made at the end. It's like that with the real bookmaking process, right? The covers come last and represent what's on the inside. You can name the journal whatever you choose and give it a title. When you feel like an area of your life has ended, or a new one is beginning, or if you have reached a milestone, you can call it a wrap. Then rip out all the extra pages and the empty ones. You can also wrap it with a cord to compress it, which will also make it easier to store and keep everything in one place. When working on it, you'll soon notice that it'll become very bulky. In my case, it got bulky pretty quick. What you want to do then is to gut it. To gut a journal or a book is to simply rip pages out to make more space. Better yet, you can take out a whole section. When you go out into the world and socialize with others, you will definitely face criticism and judgment from the people you face. No matter how hard you try, no matter how good or charming you are, or how much you have perfected your skill sets, or whatever it is you're good at, it's impossible not to face negative feedback from others at some point in your life. Judgment and criticism is in society's core. Some individuals are more sensitive to feedback than others, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that they are more likely to listen to what other people are telling them and are more likely to reevaluate if what they are doing is good or bad. Where it does become a bad thing, however, is when the person takes negative feedback and blows it out of proportions. For example, if someone tells you your jokes are bad or you make bad videos on art journaling, you decide that it's better to stop telling jokes altogether. Even worse, it might become a spillover effect. First, you stop telling jokes because you think you're bad at them. Then you might think if society doesn't like your jokes, surely they won't like what you have to say either, right? And so you stop talking to other people. You then assume if people don't like your jokes and what you have to say, then certainly people won't like to see you either, right? Thus you stop going to social gatherings, stop trying to get up in the morning, because what's the point if people will just judge you anyway and invoke that bad feeling all over again? It's understandable that people get upset when someone criticizes them. After all, we are social creatures, down to our core. What kind of feedback we get from our social life, which includes our family, will greatly determine our mental health. Society, and even more importantly, how we perceive society, influences our day-to-day actions, thoughts, and emotions more than we are aware of. Even if some people are more sensitive to negative criticism, there comes a dark moment in everyone's life. I can assure you that no matter how tough, strong, or seemingly immune one might be to others' opinions, If given the right circumstances, like being constantly bombarded with negative criticism, eventually they will break, because every person has a boiling point. There is only so much one can take. So what do you do then? You can't ignore what people are telling you, or you'll be left on your own, and you can't take to heart everything you hear either. One of the many things you can do, however, is reevaluate the stuff that you hear. Someone told you that your jokes are terrible? You might believe them, but is it really true? Okay, maybe they are. In that case, you can work to find a way to make them better, like watching stand-up comedy or observing others who are considered funny and observe what makes them funny in the first place. If someone told you that you're a terrible comedian, but more than 15 other people told you that you're really funny, then that one comment is not really worth your attention, right? However, when evaluating the usefulness of criticism, make sure not to get too emotionally attached to it. It hurts when someone tells you that you suck, and it's annoying as hell. But every emotion can be used to your advantage, whether it's anger, sadness, shame, loneliness, happiness, euphoria, dismay, rage, or even jealousy. When you feel an emotion, you either enjoy the feeling or you express it, or both. But not in a way that hurts you or someone else, but by converting them through something else, something useful or constructive. And luckily, there are plenty of ways that you can convert them into something else, like art journaling maybe? Am I subtle or what? Even if you don't consider yourself an artist or a creative person, who says you gotta be one to do stuff like this? Is there a written rule where it says that only a creative person can make a figure or draw a picture? Because that's what most people are using as an excuse. I can't draw because I'm not creative, I can't do art because I'm not an artist. Imagine if you don't want to cook lunch because you're not a cook, or you don't want to clean your room because you're not a janitor. Is that comparison too ridiculous? Anyway, the point is, an art journal is yours and yours alone. It's about the freedom to do and say what you want in a thing that will not judge you. Because a notebook can't judge you, right? Right? Of course it can't, it's an inanimate object. Well, thank you for listening, and I hope that you found this video helpful in understanding this unique approach.